Emily Carter was moving on. Jason Hill was her fresh start. Tyler Monroe, her ex-boyfriend and a state trooper, was watching. What no one knew was that behind Tyler's badge was a mind unraveling, a man prepared to use his training to commit the perfect double murder. Tyler Monroe had always looked the part of the perfect state trooper. Clean-cut, sharp jawline, disciplined posture, and a voice that commanded respect. He was the kind of officer who wrote spotless reports, never missed a court date, and shook hands with the mayor during award ceremonies. To the outside world, he was the definition of order and integrity. But underneath the polished exterior was a man who couldn't accept losing control. And when he lost Emily Carter, something inside him began to twist. Emily was a 29-year-old trauma nurse who had grown up in Wichita. She was independent, compassionate, and loved the rush of emergency medicine. She had met Tyler during a chaotic accident scene where she was treating victims on the side of the road, and he had helped clear a path through traffic. At first, their chemistry felt undeniable. Tyler seemed protective, reliable, and driven. For a woman working long shifts and carrying the emotional weight of her job, his presence felt safe. They started dating within weeks. But Tyler's attention soon became overwhelming. He sent good morning and good night texts every day without fail. He showed up at her apartment with groceries, even when she hadn't asked. He learned her schedule better than she knew it herself. If she missed a call or changed a shift, Tyler asked why, then asked again. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. But the pressure was constant, like a heavy weight resting on her chest. After a year of dating, she tried to take a break. Tyler responded by sending flowers to her workplace daily and waiting for her outside her building after night shifts. She gave him another chance, then another. Each time the same patterns returned. Eventually, Emily ended things for good. She blocked his number and changed the locks. Tyler didn't react publicly. He didn't beg. He didn't lash out. He simply vanished from her life, at least on the surface. What no one knew was that he had quietly begun watching from afar. He checked her social media through a fake account. He monitored her hospital's parking lot during her shifts. He waited to see what would happen next, and when he saw her with someone new, his control slipped even further. Jason Hill entered the picture 6 months after the final breakup. He was calm, kind, and didn't try to control anything. Emily smiled more. She started painting again. Her friends said she seemed lighter, but Tyler saw it differently. He viewed Jason not just as a new boyfriend, but as a thief, someone who had stolen what was his. That idea festered in his mind and took root. Each time he saw them together, it reinforced one belief. If he couldn't have her, no one could. And with his training, his access, and his growing anger, Tyler was preparing to turn heartbreak into something far more dangerous. Tyler Monroe had spent years mastering the art of observation. As a state trooper, he'd been trained to notice small details, tire marks on a shoulder, a twitch in a suspect's expression, the subtle shift in a person's behavior when they're hiding something. Now he was applying those same skills to watching Emily. Only this time, it wasn't part of a job, it was personal, and it was obsessive. After learning about Emily's new relationship with Jason Hill, Tyler began gathering everything he could. He used online directories, social media posts, and even ran Jason's vehicle through the department database under the guise of a routine traffic check. From that, he found Jason's address, place of employment, and even the make and year of his car. Each new piece of information added another page to the mental profile Tyler was building. He started driving past Emily's apartment late at night. At first, it was once a week. Then it became almost nightly. He parked in unmarked spots across the street, kept the engine off, and watched the lights in her windows. Sometimes he stayed for hours, recording when the lights turned off, when Jason's car arrived, when it left. On weekends, he followed them discreetly, keeping several cars between them, making mental notes of their routines. He never spoke to them, never made contact. But the surveillance continued to tighten like a noose. Emily noticed little things. Her mailbox left slightly ajar, the feeling of being watched while walking to her car. She told friends she felt paranoid, but had no proof. She filed a report after seeing a dark SUV parked across from her apartment too often, but nothing ever came of it. Without evidence and with no direct threats, it was chalked up to anxiety. The fact that Tyler was a respected officer only added to the illusion of safety. No one thought to look in his direction. Tyler, meanwhile, started collecting more. He accessed traffic cameras near Emily A.'s route to work and watched the footage through his patrol computer. If Emily changed her schedule, he'd figure it out by tracking her movements. He noticed when Jason started spending nights regularly at her place and how they often left together early Saturday mornings. He memorized their patterns until they became predictable. The more Tyler watched, the angrier he became. To him, Emily wasn't just moving on, she was flaunting it. His mind rewrote reality into a betrayal, framing Jason as the villain and Emily as ungrateful. That twisted logic gave him justification. He wasn't stalking in his view, he was protecting something that had once belonged to him. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Tyler hacked into Emily A.'s email using a password he had guessed based on her pet S name. That's when he saw the confirmation for a weekend cabin getaway, just the two of them, alone in the woods, far from city cameras and neighbors. A plan started to form, dark and deliberate. He already had the training, the tools, and the motive. Now, he had the opportunity. The cabin sat deep in the smoky hills of Kansas, tucked away behind layers of pine and gravel roads. It was the perfect place for a quiet escape, peaceful and isolated, far from the chaos of daily life. Emily had been looking forward to the weekend with Jason. They both needed it. After weeks of stressful shifts at the hospital and the odd moments of unease she couldn't quite explain, the idea of disconnecting in the woods brought relief. No phones, no emails, just the sound of wind through the trees and a fire crackling at night. What Emily didn't know was that Tyler Monroe had already been there for hours before they arrived. He had taken leave from work using a fabricated family emergency. 2 days before the trip, he'd scouted the area. The cabin was remote, with one main road in and out surrounded by forest. He parked his unmarked cruiser nearly a mile away and hiked through the woods, carrying a backpack with food, gear, and a silenced weapon he had stolen from an old unregistered evidence locker. He set up camp in the dense brush where he had a clear line of sight to the cabin. From there, he waited. When Emily and Jason pulled up just after sunset, Tyler watched every movement. They unloaded groceries and luggage, laughed about something by the front door, and disappeared inside. Hours passed as the couple cooked, ate, and eventually settled in for the night. Tyler didn't move. He knew their routines too well by now and was in no rush. His breathing stayed calm. His hands never trembled. At 3:42 a.m., Tyler crept out from the trees. He wore tactical gear, gloves, and a balaclava. Night vision goggles made the path clear. He circled the cabin without making a sound and located the fuse box behind the house. With one flick of a switch, the lights inside the cabin died, leaving only the glow from the fireplace. The sudden power outage didn't wake them. They had fallen asleep on the couch under a blanket, firelight flickering across their faces. Tyler entered through the back door, which he had quietly unlocked earlier using a copied key he made months ago. He stepped across the wooden floor like a shadow. The weapon in his hand made no sound as it discharged twice. Once for Jason, once for Emily. Both were asleep. Neither had time to react. Tyler wiped down surfaces, restored the lock, and left through the same door. Within 20 minutes, he had disappeared into the forest again, leaving behind no trace. By sunrise, he was back on the road, his uniform packed neatly in his car, his face clean-shaven, and his story rehearsed. When police discovered the bodies later that evening, nothing made sense. There were no signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds, and no stolen belongings. The door was locked from the inside. The only hint of disturbance was the power outage, and even that seemed explainable. The murders had all the marks of a professional job. No one suspected the ex-boyfriend with a badge. News of the cabin murders spread quickly. Two young professionals, found shot execution style in a remote vacation rental with no signs of struggle or robbery, drew immediate media attention. Reporters described it as a clean hit, a term more often associated with organized crime than small-town Kansas. Emily Carter and Jason Hill's deaths shook the community, especially those who knew how kind and peaceful the couple had been. Tributes poured in online. Memorials formed outside Emily's hospital and Jason's school. But while grief dominated public spaces, detectives worked in quiet urgency, trying to unravel how two people could be murdered in such a calculated, silent way. Tyler Monroe was among the first to reach out to law enforcement, offering assistance in the investigation. He claimed to have dated Emily years ago and expressed concern over the details of the crime. His uniform, composure, and experience gave weight to his words. Investigators saw him as a colleague, helpful, informed, and reliable. His name was noted but never seriously considered, at least not yet. But as the investigation deepened, small cracks began to form. A local hunter contacted authorities to report seeing a man dressed in black tactical clothing hiking through the woods the same weekend of the murders. While the sighting wasn't alarming on its own, it was unusual for that time of year, and the description was strangely specific. Still, without a clear face or license plate, the lead was shelved. The breakthrough came when a wildlife camera, mounted deep in the trail system near the cabin, captured a grainy image of a dark SUV parked just off a service road. The vehicle had no visible markings, but its shape, light bar, and tire style matched the state police's unmarked cruisers. Investigators requested a log of department vehicle usage for that weekend. Most were accounted for, except one. Tyler Monroe's. When asked, Tyler claimed to have been visiting a sick uncle in Missouri. He offered vague details but couldn't provide receipts, cell tower data, or proof of his stay. Investigators began to look deeper. They pulled his work computer records, hoping to confirm his alibi. Instead, they uncovered something chilling. Tyler had accessed Emily S.'s email multiple times from his patrol station in the weeks leading up to the murders. He'd also pulled Jason's DMV records, something he had no valid reason to do. Suspicion hardened into something more serious. Search warrants were filed, and his apartment was raided days later. Inside, detectives found a hidden locker containing printed maps of the cabin area, screenshots of Emily's calendar, photos taken from afar of her and Jason at restaurants, and handwritten notes tracking their movements. One file folder was marked E+J, and it included a timeline of the planned weekend trip. Though the murder weapon wasn't recovered, the evidence painted a clear picture of premeditation and obsession. Tyler was arrested without incident in a grocery store parking lot, wearing civilian clothes and carrying a go bag filled with cash, fake IDs, and burner phones. The perfect mask had finally slipped. The officer who once protected the law had weaponized it instead. Tyler Monroe's trial was swift, but its impact was long-lasting. Once admired for his discipline and composure as a state trooper, he now sat in a courtroom shackled, emotionless, and pale under the harsh lighting. The prosecution didn't rely on dramatic speeches or speculation. They let the evidence speak for itself. Access logs to Emily's accounts, surveillance footage showing his unmarked vehicle near the cabin, the detailed tracking notes, and the disturbing folder labeled E+J. Jurors were shown the printed maps and timelines that laid out the crime as clearly as any confession. It was cold, calculated, and obsessive. He hadn't snapped in a moment of passion. He had planned every step. The defense tried to argue emotional disturbance. They painted Tyler as a man betrayed, struggling with abandonment, spiraling after heartbreak. But their argument fell flat in the face of the precision and patience he had shown. The jury saw not a heartbroken man, but a predator who used his law enforcement training as a shield. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. Tyler Monroe was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The fallout extended beyond the courtroom. The Kansas State Police faced heavy criticism for missing the warning signs. Tyler had accessed private databases without cause, stalked a civilian using official resources, and removed evidence from department storage, all without triggering internal red flags. A full internal audit revealed gaps in accountability and an alarming lack of oversight for how officers accessed and used sensitive data. In response, new state laws were enacted within months. One required all police data access to be logged, flagged, and periodically reviewed. Another created an independent civilian oversight board to investigate complaints and monitor internal affairs investigations. It was a small measure of justice for a system that had failed to protect Emily and Jason. Emily's family established a foundation in her name to support victims of stalking and intimate partner violence, particularly those whose abusers held positions of authority. Jason's school planted a memorial garden where students and staff gathered each year to remember the art teacher with the quiet smile and endless patience. Together, the families turned their grief into something lasting: awareness, advocacy, and accountability. As for the cabin where it all happened, it was eventually taken off the rental market. Locals say it still sits there, empty and untouched, as if time had paused. The trail where Tyler waited in the woods has become overgrown. Some hikers avoid it. Others pass by quietly, knowing the story. It's become a grim reminder of how quickly safety can be shattered when the wrong person wears the right uniform. Tyler Monroe never spoke during the trial, never gave an apology or explanation. But his silence said enough. He had made himself judge, jury, and executioner, not out of love, but out of control. And in the end, it was that need for control that destroyed 3 lives and changed a community forever.